everybody and welcome back to another episode of RKade. Today I'm going to try out something different. Instead of the usual Blitz Chess Rate and Climb Let's Play, we're going to be learning actually how to play chess. It's because I know that some of you who watch my videos might not know how to play chess. I might not know the advanced tactics or even the basic tactics and the beginner tactics. So we're going to learn that today. And the first piece we're going to talk, in this first video, we're going to talk about how to move the chess pieces and just the overall layout of the board and just the beginning, very beginner tactics of the game. So in chess you have an 8x8 grid, so 8 over here and 8 over here, 64 squares. And when you first start out a game, you're going to have pawns from here to here, all pawns, and then it's going to go like this. This is if on computer it's just going to do this for you. However, if you want to play by yourself, this is how you should arrange it. Rook, knight, and these are the names of the pieces: rook, knight, bishop, queen, king, and then same like this, like a mirror, bishop, knight, and rook. And all over here is pawns. And then on the other side, the black side, it's going to be the same thing here. So all over here is pawns, and over here is a rook, knight, bishop, queen, king, bishop, knight, and a rook. So that's how the pieces are laid out in a normal chess game. So now that I got your pieces set up, you're thinking, okay, that's all good and all, but how do you play? That's what we're going to learn first. So the first piece, the pawn. The most frequent piece that you're probably going to use throughout your game, the piece that you're going to probably start with the most, and the piece that can maybe save your game if you're predicted to lose. So how do you use a pawn? When you're first starting out using a pawn, you can move 2 squares forward, and pawns can only move forward. So this pawn can only move like that. The only time they might move diagonally is when they're attacking another opponent's piece, but we're going to get to that later. So on your first move, you move this pawn from d2, from here, to d4, 2 spaces forward. But you can only move your pawn 2 spaces forward on your first move. After that, you just have to move it 1 space forward. And let's just say there's the opponent's piece right here. You move your pawn 2 spaces forward, they move their pawn 2 spaces forward, and now they're eyeing each other. Very nice. How do you attack this opponent's pawn? Now, to attack opponent's pawn in chess, you don't go over the piece, you don't go like this and then take the pawn, you don't go like that, you don't go like that. What you do, you just go to the pawn, move the pawn diagonally, and attack the piece. And that's how you capture a piece in chess, using a pawn. So you can only capture diagonally, but you can move forward. That's basically the 2 rules for pawn in chess. Apart from when you're moving on your first move, you can move 2 spaces forward. However, there's one crucial thing that I forgot to tell you about. It's promoting your pawn to a queen. So when your pawn goes from your side of the board to the opposite side of the board, what you can do, you can promote it to a queen, or you can promote it to any other piece that is not the king or the pawn. So let's just say I've been playing with the pawn, I'm going like this, dun, James Bond style, whatever, and I move my pawn to the opposite side of the board. What I can then do is I can promote my pawn to one of these 4 pieces: a bishop, a knight, a rook, and a queen. Now, we're going to learn about this later, but you should almost like never, why does it sound so weird? Never. You should never promote your pawn to a bishop or a rook. You can either promote your pawn to a knight or a queen, but in most cases, promote your pawn to a queen, because the queen is the most powerful board in the game. So That is the pawn. There is one more function that I forgot to tell you about the pawn. It's called en passant, but we're going to learn that in a later video. So that's the pawn. Next up, the bishop. Now, the bishops, they start over here and over here. You have a light squared bishop and a dark squared bishop. And the light squared bishop can only move on the white tiles, the light tiles, and dark squared bishop can only move along the dark tiles. And the bishops can only move diagonally. So let's say you're starting out over here and you want to move your bishop. What you can do, you can move your bishop diagonally like this, or you can move your bishop diagonally like this. These are the only spaces that this bishop can go to. So you can go to here, 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 whatever. It can move an infinite amount of spaces, but only diagonally. It can't move forwards and backwards, and it can't move side to side. Only diagonally. Like this. So I can move my bishop here, or I can move my bishop here, or here, or here. But it cannot go like that, like that, like that, or like that. So what have you learnt? We learnt that the bishops, there's going to be a light squared bishop and a dark squared bishop. A light squared bishop and dark squared bishop. And they can only move diagonally, not forward and backwards or side to side. Now, the knight. The knight's a tricky piece because it's a nice piece to have, and it's a very weird piece. So how do you move the knight? When you start with a knight, it starts off over here, and it starts off over here. I can move my knight in a L shape, like this, or like this. You can only move a knight 2 pieces forward, and then 1 piece left or right. So this is an L shape, 2 pieces forward and 1 piece left or right. 2 pieces forward and 1 piece left or right. And the same one here. Over here or over here. And it sort of resembles an L shape. So if you move my knight over here, you can see it sort of goes like an L shape. So that's basically the knight. Now there's one extra function that you can do with the knight. So let's just say you have a pawn over here, and you have a knight over here, and you have another pawn over here. Let's get rid of that knight. Normally in chess, you're not allowed to jump over another piece. So for example, with this bishop, if I move the bishop over here, I can't go onto this square because the pawn is blocking this square. I can only move up to a maximum of this square. If I was capturing an opponent's piece though, I can do this. So I can move to that square if it was the opposite opponent's piece. However, because it's my piece, I can't capture my own piece, so I just have to do like this with the bishop. Apart from that, let's now move back to the knight. With the knight, you can jump opponents' pieces. So what I'm trying to say is, normally, with any other piece, you can't do this because in the way of this pawn is this pawn. So when I try to jump the opponent's piece, this pawn is going to be blocking my way. But the knight has a special ability. As I said, it can jump over the opponent's piece and land on that pawn, on the pawn. So that is the knight. Now the rook. Personally, one of my favorite pieces of the game, apart from the queen. The rook it's like the bishop, but it's inverted. So instead of moving diagonally in an infinite amount of squares, the rook can only move side to sideways an infinite amount of squares. Sideways or up and down. Like this. So these are all the squares that the rook can move onto. So sideways like this, or like that, or like this. And that's basically it. If you're trying to attack opponent's piece, you can just go like this. And if there's your piece in the way, you can't move past this. You have to go around the opponent's piece. You have to go around your piece like that. But it cannot go diagonally. It cannot do this. That can never happen in a game. So if somebody does that, they're cheating. Now, that is the rook. They can only move backwards and forwards and side to sides, but not diagonally. Big cross for diagonal. Now, the queen. If I can get the queen out. The queen is the most, repeat after me, the queen is the most powerful piece of the game. The most powerful piece of the game. With the queen, you can basically, if you have a queen and the other opponent has like lost the queen because you took the queen, you basically won the game. Because with the queen, it can move like, imagine like a pawn, not a pawn, imagine like a bishop and a rook combined together. So the queen can move up, down, left, right, and diagonally in infinite amount of ways. That is so broken, it's actually crazy. Diagonally like that. So let's just say you're the queen over here, you start out over here. You can go all the way to the other side. You can go like this, and you can go like this, and you can go like this, and you can go like this. But make sure there's no other pieces there. However, the only time when the piece can't move, like with the other pieces, when the queen can't move, is when there's your like piece in the way. It can only move up to here because there's pawns in the way. If you get rid of that pawn, however, the queen is basically the most powerful piece in the whole entire game. However, it is sort of the weakest, not the weakest, the most vulnerable, apart from the king. Because if you lose a queen, it's basically game over for you. You might as well just resign there and then. Unless you're trading queens, but that's going to be another episode. So that is the queen. The queen can move up, down, sideways, and diagonally an infinite amount of squares. And now, the king. The king is a very simple square. It's the weakest out of all the squares, it's the weakest out of all the pieces, even the pawn. And the king can only do this. Move one square around them. So if the king's like next to the wall, like next to this wall, it can only move one square next to him, diagonally and sideways. So it can go like this, like that, but it can only move one square. Never in any case can the king move two squares. You can't do that. Sorry, you can't do this. He can only move one square at a time around himself. So these are all the squares that the king can go to. And that is the king. Now, with the king, he is basically the piece that you have to protect the most. Repeat after me. The king is the piece that you have to protect the most. If you lose your king, that is literally game over. So the only way that you can lose your king is if your king gets taken. Now, there's a certain rule in chess where if the king is in danger and is going to get captured in the next move, the opponent player has to call out check, or somebody has to call out check. So for example, if I have the king over here and the queen, opponent's queen, is going to attack my king, the opponent has to say check, and then I have to move my king out of the way. And the only way they can lose, apart from a draw or a stalemate, but that's going to be another episode, is if you get checkmated by the opponent's piece. So let's think about this. Can the king move here? No, because if he moves there, the queen can get in. The king can't move here, the queen can get in. And the king can't move here because the queen can get the king as well. And I know other pieces to protect the king. And the king can't get the queen, because if the king gets the queen, the rook all the way over here, because remember, the rook can move infinitely backwards and forwards in an infinite amount of moves. And if the king gets the queen, the rook can get the king. So this is what we call checkmate. And that is game. So that is the basics of chess, guys. I hope you learned something, and that's going to be episode 1 of this series, how to play chess, the ultimate guide. And as you can see, This is RKade Chess signing out. Au revoir, people.